And thank you to the congregation for giving me the opportunity to go to Colombia earlier this month. It was an incredible trip. I've been doing foreign missionary work for 15 years and have traveled multiple times to Ukraine, been to Central America, and now 2 trips to Colombia. And I have to say, this is by far the best trip I've ever been on. I thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it. It was also the most uncomfortable trip I've ever been on, as far as personal amenities and personal comfort. And we'll talk more about that. But, you know, if you ever had it cross your mind that you might be uncomfortable or not enjoying a particular situation, that always went away when we were working with the brethren. Because you got reminded real quick while you were there. And all those personal comforts and things that were on your mind just went out the window. And you realize the true purpose why you were there. Like I said, this is the best trip I've ever been on. And there were many, many things that reminded me of this trip, why we do this kind of work. And I really hope that God will bless us with an opportunity to go again. And I would love to be able to take several of you with me the next time we go. Because your life will be forever changed if you could get away and go with us down there. The trip went March 7th to the 23rd, and this is a map of Colombia. And I'll zoom in on the country, the map here in just a moment, but just kind of give you a size comparison. How many are familiar with Texas? Okay, this is about 5 times as big as Texas. All right, so that's how big Colombia is. Pacific Ocean out on its west coast, Ecuador to the southwest, and Peru to the south. Brazil and the Amazon there in the southeast part. Most of that is jungle in the southeastern part. And then the eastern part of the country is mostly plains and unpopulated. And then up to the northeast you have Venezuela. So it's in the northwest corner of South America. Panama is up to the northwest. There are no roads, by the way, to get from Panama to Colombia, which I didn't know. If you ever thought you could drive from here to the tip of South America, you can't do it all the way by road. You have to get on a boat and go between Panama and Colombia because there are no roads through there, which I just learned on this trip. But anyway, this is a map of the country, and the red line you see is a route, a map of the route of our trip, and this is kind of to zoom in on that. But we traveled 2,500 miles, give or take, over the course of 16 days. 11 different congregations that I was able to worship with and participate with. And Colombia, one of the things I learned on this trip is it has a very dynamic geography. There are 3 mountain ranges in the country, and I was around all 3 of them on this trip and traveled over 2 of them, across 2 of them. And so at one point we were just under 11,000 feet elevation. It was so funny. We're driving up this road, and it's a little 2-lane road, and there's traffic all over it, and we were going very slow. And I glanced over to my right as we were driving up the road, and in front of this house was a sign on the tree that said Alaska. And because there's about 10,000 feet elevation, and it was, for a Colombian, that's getting pretty high and pretty cold. But no snow anywhere around there. But it was a very interesting trip. So my trip started down to the south. I actually flew into Bogota and overnighted there in the airport. The next morning, on a Friday morning, flew down to Cali, which you see down in the southwestern part of the country. And I held a gospel meeting there over the weekend, and then we traveled from there, making our way all the way up into the northern part of the country. And throughout those 2 weeks, winding around through those different villages, and ultimately back down in Medellin, where took off and came home a week ago yesterday. So it was about 2,500 miles covered. And let's just say this, if you can imagine driving from here to Los Angeles, because that's about what that is, on a 2-lane road that parts has gravel and all kinds of truck traffic and going through steep mountains, that's what it'd be like. Pretty crazy. So, but it was a fantastic trip. So, trip started Friday night in Cali. This is some of the Christians there. One of the men that I worked with extensively through the trip is to my right. His name is Carlos Julio Ramirez, and he is, if the church in Cali is not too far from putting in elders, this will be the first church in the country to have an eldership. And the man to my right and standing in front of Jaime, both of those two men would constitute the eldership in the church in Cali if they get to that point and establish elders. Two very good men. I was in both of their homes. To the lady to my left and the two children is Carlos Julio's wife and two kids. Just an incredible family. Enjoyed being with them. While we were in the church, while we were working with the church in Cali, we had two baptisms. It was a Saturday night. I preached that evening. There was a sermon I did here about 6 or 8 weeks ago out of Hebrews chapter 12, called to a living city, and made a comparison between Mount Sinai and Mount Zion. That's a sermon I delivered that night. And I tell you, I found out that is a very difficult sermon to deliver through translation. But the people really enjoyed and responded to that message. And afterward, we had the lady up on the top picture there. Her name is Alexandra, and she wanted to be baptized. And so we took her confession, and I baptized her to Christ. Now, what was so cool about this is that night the people had done their work. They had a lot of guests there from the community. And after we baptized Alexandra, and everybody gathered around and witnessed that, and there were songs sang and prayers prayed, some of the guests that were there wanted to study. And so I've never seen anything like this in my life, where after this first baptism, people just take their chairs and gather up in circles in various parts around the building, and I didn't put that picture in. Anyway, there was like 4 Bible studies going on inside the auditorium at one time. People gathered up in chairs studying about baptism. And this went on probably about 30 or 40 minutes. And after that, Gladys, the lady on the bottom picture, she's the one stooped over. She's 85 years old. And she said, "Sometimes I don't have my mind, but I have my mind tonight, and I want to have my sins washed away." And so we helped her become baptized and become a Christian. Sweet, sweet lady. And, you know, their baptistries have no hot water. And I have a picture, I didn't include it, but they went out into the town and found these little electrical things you could stick in the water to heat the water. And they just tried to heat the water up in buckets and then pour that in the baptistry to warm the water. Doesn't work. And, you know, when we put Gladys in the baptistry, oh wow, it was cold to her. It was really cold. It was a sacrifice for her to do that. But I say, I've never seen a person come up out of the water with a frown on their face. She was so thrilled to be added to the body of Christ. So it was an incredible night just to see those Christians working and studying with the lost and all the good that was going on there. Cali, the church there has about 80 people in number. It's a good congregation with a lot of potential to grow. And they have a man working with them there now. And there's just some really encouraging things going on there. Carlos Julio Ramirez, I mentioned him a moment ago. He helped establish that congregation, him and Jaime, back about 17 years ago. So the church has been there just under 2 decades and has grown substantially. So these are some of the sisters in Cali. They got a hold of my phone and started taking pictures. And really cool to watch them and a lot of the kids. I was just amazed at all the kids on this trip. And you'll see more of that as we go. So the meeting here concluded on Sunday. And we had, about a week before I went, Jaime's daughter wrecked his car. And so we had to travel back to Manizales, where Jaime lives, and his brother allowed us to drive his truck for this big road trip we were going to do. So we rode a bus from Cali to Manizales, and everyone at least once in their life should climb in a Kia minivan with 9 other souls and ride in the back seat of the minivan for 6 hours with a bunch of Colombians. You should do that at least once in your life, okay? It was an experience I'll never forget. And ride on their roads and the way their people drive. I have a few more gray hairs now. But, so by Monday morning we're in Manizales, and we picked up the truck that we needed and then took out, and we spent the rest of Monday night on the road in a little town. I have no idea where it is. All I know was it was pouring down rain. It was hot. In fact, we stayed in this hotel. We couldn't find a place to stay. This is Monday night, the 11th, I think. And we can't find a hotel. And we finally found this one place, and we had 4 of us traveling together, and we had to find a room, and they finally gave us a room, and it was on the 5th floor. It's completely enclosed inside the building. There's no outside air anywhere. They opened the door to this room, and the heat just rushes out. And I'm going, oh, this is not good. And thankfully there was an air conditioner in there. It was the last time we'd have air conditioning for the rest of the trip, basically. And they had a fan on, so it cooled down in there quite nicely. But the next morning, they ran out of water before I could get a shower. And so it was an interesting day from there. So that night on Tuesday, we traveled to La Jagua. And La Jagua is up in the very northeastern corner of Colombia. There's a mountain range just outside of town that separates that village from Venezuela. So that gives you kind of an idea of where we were. The church in La Jagua has been there about 7 or 8 years. They had about 80 people there in that congregation. They've just constructed this place to meet, and that's the picture you see there, their new place of worship. Right next to them is the bamboo building that they had constructed to begin with, and they outgrew it. And now they're using the bamboo place, the old place that they worship, as for classrooms and things. They have spent, in fact, one of the preachers there has probably spent most of his money to try to build this place that they're meeting in. But it is very nice and modern for them, and they're very happy with it. But we were there Tuesday night and Wednesday night, and the next day, on Wednesday, one of the families in the congregation invited us over for coffee. It's Colombia, right? You gotta have coffee. Oh, it's 100 degrees outside. And they said, well, drink coffee, brother. It'll make your body used to the heat. So anyway, we were over there, and while we were there, this family had a family friend who was not a Christian, and we were asked to share the gospel with the young man you see there on the left of the screen. And so we were able to talk to him for over an hour. He came back to services that night. We didn't get a response out of him while we were there, Lord willing. At some point he will obey the gospel, but it was a very productive study that day. And the family that had us over, they have just been living in this. It's basically a 2-room house. And the front room of the house, the husband has turned into a store. And he sells bread and other things out of it. He's only had it open a couple of months, and he told us that most of the sales he's made over the last couple of months have been on credit, because a lot of the people around don't have that much money. But they were very generous with us and made us feel welcome in their home. Later that day, we went about 40 miles to the west of La Jagua to a place called La Loma. And that area of Colombia is very rich in coal. And they discovered coal there about 8 years ago. And over the last 8 years, there's substantial strip mining going on. And there's a little mining town that's cropped up there. And this sister that's on the right of your screen, she was converted just a few years ago. The preacher from La Jagua drives over there at his own expense once a week to study with her, and he's trying to convert other people in this mining town. But she had such a sad story. Her 16-year-old son is in a drug gang, and they supply drugs to all the mine workers. And it's a murderous gang, and she's very worried that he may wind up either be killed or killing someone else. And she cried, and she cried, and she cried. Her son's 16 years old. And we just did our best to encourage her and to give her the hope that's found through the gospel that people can change. And we prayed with her and for her son. But it was a very touching hour and a half or so there meeting with her. She poured out her heart. And she was very thankful that we were able to come over and encourage her. Here's one of the streets in La Habra. So again, you're talking very third world. No paved streets other than the main road that went through town. And just very basic living. Again, this is the northern part of Colombia. Not much to do there as far as a career is concerned. And you basically just sell enough things or do enough things to provide for your basic living, and that's about it. This is outside, just right outside of town, and that's looking right toward Venezuela. The preacher that lives there, and I'm going to introduce you to him in just a moment, his name is Ezekiel St. John, and he lives on $200 a month. And he left a lucrative construction job up on the north coast of Barranquilla and decided he needed to preach. And he went down to La Habra and has helped them grow that congregation. And he's very skilled in what he does. And this land that you see in the picture is right next to where he wants to build his own home. And what he's doing is he made the bricks for the foundation of his home. And he showed that to us. And as he gets enough money, he's going to build his house. He wants to stay there and help the church grow. This guy's living on $200 a month. It'll just blow your mind when you think about it. This is right down from his house. That says for rent. Anybody want to rent that? Okay, you could free air conditioning right there in La Habra. And that picture just said a lot to me as far as the living conditions of that town. This is that night at services. The kids are reading my Bible. And what they wanted to look at my Bibles in English. And they're trying to figure out the English words and figure out what they mean in Spanish. But I just thought it was a priceless picture. Lots of good little kids running around. This is the preacher on the left, Ezekiel St. John. And again, he's been there a few years and lives on very little. One of the things that the Kettering Church did while we were there is we bought some Bibles to hand out to people who do not own a Bible. And we left several Bibles there in La Habra. And Jaime had some extra communion sets. We brought those up for the Christians there. But we left 6 or 7, 8 Bibles there in that town for people to hand those things out so that those who do not have a Bible can use them. We were looking for large print Spanish Bibles because a lot of the people don't have reading glasses, and it makes it a little bit easier to read those Bibles. But that was one of the main points of our mission, was to help in that. And by the way, I would hope at some point we'd be able to do that again, be able to buy more Bibles and help get those into the hands of the people. One of the things I saw when I would preach in just about every place on the north coast of Colombia is many of the people did not own a Bible. They just don't have access to it. Now those are things we take for granted. But these people, they were so thankful to get Bibles into their hands. And this happened in several places that we were at. This is the house that Ezekiel St. Juan lives in. It's one room. And he pays rent on that. But we went and ate there, and of course there's no room inside the house to eat, and you wouldn't want to eat inside the house that day anyway. It was 100 degrees. So we ate together outside of the house, back behind it. But that's his home. So these are ministers that are working down there for next to nothing. But they work because they love the Lord. And they want to see souls brought to the Lord. And I was just so impressed by his humility and his desire to serve. When he drives out to that mining town I mentioned a few moments ago, that's all at his own expense. And gas is not cheap. Transportation is not cheap. So these men are making tremendous